Learning project ignition. It's actually one of the keys to our success. And we figured this out over trial and unfortunately error over many years, a lot of years, more than a decade. It's a fantastic way to kick off a project by bringing everybody together to really get to the heart of the problem. And here's how we do this. First of all, we get all the right people in the room, and it could be a virtual room or a face-to-face room, but we're bringing everybody in. That includes project sponsor, key stakeholders, subject matter experts, ideally some members of the learner population, or their representatives, their supervisors, their coaches, their trainers, somebody who's very, very in tune with the actual learners for the project. And often the people most in tune with the learners are not your subject matter experts and your sponsors. So really take a critical look at who gets invited to this. And on the Torrance Learning side, we will bring in our project lead, our instructional strategist for the project, the instructional designer for the project, and usually someone from our development team. And that gives us a whole range of heads around the problem. In the project ignition session, which generally, I will tell you, generally runs 3 or more hours. We like to get it all at once. Sometimes we have to break it up, but we like to get it pretty compressed. For very large programs, we might do project ignition over an extended period of time. But let's take that 3-hour model, right? And in the first hour, we will spend perhaps the most important time of the entire project, right? Is that very first hour. And in that first hour, we will hone in on the goal for the project. Because the goal, regardless of what you asked us to do, the goal is not to build a training program, right? The goal is to help people do something different. And so we're going to find out what is that goal, what is that doing, and what the organization, right? What our business sponsor wants, what the learner's goal for that training outcome is, and then any other additional ancillary goals that we might have as a learning organization, right? What we're really going to do is we're going to hone in, though, on that overlap between the organization's goals and the learner's goals, and make sure that we have them defined in very business-focused or performance-focused outcomes kind of ways. So it won't sound anything like learn to build capability to create awareness of or deliver a 30-minute e-learning course, right? It'll sound more like salespeople convey the proper product strategy to potential customers based on what customers tell you that. Or line operators will be able to correctly thread the machine in order to reduce errors on the line by 30% in the next year. Or supervisors will coach their teams through regular one-on-ones that follow a particular structure, right? All of those, right? Think for a minute. All of those are defined in business terms and performance terms, not in learning terms. Right? I didn't say everybody will know how to thread the machine. And I didn't say that managers will know how to, or managers will complete a course on how to do one-on-ones. It's like, no, they'll actually do those one-on-ones. So that goal alignment is huge. It also helps us identify areas where training alone isn't going to solve the problem. The second hour of the project ignition is generally focused around the learner personas. And this is where we look at archetypes for segments of our target audience. Yes, everybody needs to come to training. I get it. But what we're going to do here is we're going to look at who are the archetypes, right? The segments who come to this learning experience and what do they need from it. We're also going to look at, right? Which of those learners do we need to be helping to be the most successful? Some target populations are going to be more critical to the organization than others who are just attending the course. And if you can't be all things to all people and you don't have unlimited scope or budget, which we don't, I get it, then we need to know who do we have to make successful? And that's our primary focus. So that's the second hour. In the third hour, then, we will identify the very specific on-the-job activities and outcomes that we want people to be achieving. So what are the behaviors that someone does on the job when they are successfully meeting that goal we identified in the first hour? Right? And so those are going to be things like log into the system, filter by this particular thing, run a report. They're going to be things like set up a one-on-one, follow a prescribed agenda, respond to questions. It's going to be, find the right packaging film, thread the machine following these 18 steps. Stop before you turn on the machine and check this thing. All of these are defined in on the job, like after training, what kinds of outcomes, behavior outcomes do we want to have? And that then sets both the structure and the framework for the learning experience, but also the learning objectives. At the same time, we're also looking at ways in which we can measure these things. We've got goals that are measurable. We have these outcomes that are measurable, these behavioral steps that are measurable, and all of these set us up for evaluating whether or not the learning we're creating is successful at all. Those are the three critical parts of the Learning Project Ignition. Along the way, we'll also talk about things like what's in scope, what's out of scope, what might be changing rapidly versus what's never going to change, and some ideas that you may have for making this learning experience come to life. All of that is part of the Ignition session and some of the follow-on work that we'll be doing with you when we create the instructional strategy and that course skeleton. That course skeleton then outlines what's our vision, what's our strategy, and how are things going to flow through the learning. And that then is what we can come back to you at the end of the Ignition and say, here's what we think we're building. Does this make sense for you? We would love to talk more with you about Ignition. So by all means, ask questions, jump right in, and we are looking forward to our session together.